didn't have an education. I was like, I had, 1 year of college at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I thought
Mhm.
this is what I was going to do for my
Yeah.
life. And I'm out of a job. I'm out of livelihood at 22.
Yeah.
And so by that time, I had driven across the country, Los Angeles, to try to be a movie star, because I figured, well, let's see, I can't dance anymore, but it obviously doesn't take any talent to be an actor. I mean, look at all
Mhm.
these clowns who are acting. You don't need
Right.
to even know anything. I did that life of poverty and lack, fear, not enoughness. We mostly subsisted on macaroni and cheese and,
Yeah.
because I saw that right down the street, literally, there was great wealth and abundance.
Yeah.
So from the time I was very young, I was always asking the question, how the heck do I get from here to there? With the engine running, you would asphyxiate yourself and you would die.
Mhm.
And I figured, well, that's a good way to go, because basically you fall asleep and you don't wake up.
Right.
There was just one problem. I was living in this little apartment and we didn't have a garage. We had open auto bays. So I said, well, that's not going to work. So I actually skipped 8th grade because I was one of those smart and talented, or what do they call it, gifted and talented kids, because I was reading before I was 2 years old. And,
Yeah.
they basically said, hey, no, we don't have anything else to teach you here. So you want to go to high school? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when I was taking Latin, and I took 2 years of Spanish in 1 year, and a lot of stuff like that. And so I
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Dr. Noah St. John, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And so, like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about power habits for real estate professionals and
Yep.
what an amazing thing you're doing to help people in our industry. Thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
So where were you born?
Well, I was actually born in Hackensack, New Jersey, but I grew up in Kennebunkport, Maine.
Wow.
So, yeah. So my parents moved there when I was less than 2 years old.
Yeah.
So I grew up poor in a rich neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
And I know that's a total cliche, but it's totally true. I grew up in Kennebunkport, Maine, which some people might know is one of the wealthiest communities in New England.
Yeah.
But my family was dirt poor. And I mean that literally, because we lived at the bottom of a dirt road in a drafty, unfinished house that my parents ended up losing to foreclosure when I was just 15 years old. So from a very young age, Mike, I was painfully exposed to the gap, the chasm between the haves and the have-nots. The haves was everyone else in the community, and the have-nots was my family. Now, I'm sure everyone listening to this program has heard motivational speakers, and they'll get on stage and they'll say something like, well, we were poor, but we were happy. We didn't know we were poor. Well, I tell you what, in my family, we freaking knew we were poor. Because
no mystery.
No, because my mother, bless her heart, reminded us every day that we were poor and miserable. So no, it wasn't happy. It sucked.
Oh my God.
And so from a very young age, I hated that life of poverty. I hated that life of poverty and lack, fear, not enoughness. We mostly subsisted on macaroni and cheese and, because I saw that right down the street, literally, there was great wealth and abundance. Yeah. So from the time I was very young, I was always asking the question, how the heck do I get from here to there? Mm-hmm. And of course, there was no one to help me back then. There was no internet or all the things we have today. So I did the only thing I could think of, which is I went to the library and I read every book in the self-help section. because I knew that if I wanted to make something better of myself, live a better life, I had to change. I had to do something different to be, different from what I grew up with. So I literally read over 300 self-help books. What's that?
How old were you when you started reading self-help books?
Well, you're not going to believe me when I tell you, but I was actually 7 years old when I first read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay,
now,
why wouldn't I believe you?
Well, I actually told that story in my very first book, and my editor told me to take it out because she said people wouldn't believe me. So I did. And I'm like, you can ask my mother. I did that, So anyway.
I disagree with your editor. I disagree with your editor. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
For people who have grown up in a household where there's a lot of victimhood going on, there's a lot of victim triangle existence, that kind of thing. As a young person, you're seeking something different because you sort of, when you're younger, when you're 7, you're somewhat optimistic, right? And you sort of look at the world differently than what you're being told by your parents. And I have some experience with this. So I'm talking from a personal standpoint, right?
Yeah.
I had somebody in my life who was absolutely so instrumental, and somebody who had been through real hardship, like real poverty, real, you know what I'm saying? And that person would not let me adopt a negative mindset, right? And thank God for him, right? Because it was my grandfather, and my grandfather just basically said, look, if there's a will, there's a way. There's a way to do this. He grew up in the Great Depression, and he literally said to me, he said, you think this is rough? You haven't seen rough, right? And it was one of those where, because I asked him, I said, so how did you, how, they had nothing but cornmeal to eat every day for years, right? And once in a great while they would have a chicken, or once in a great while they'd have some beef or whatever. But a lot of times it was somebody that was a neighbor who appreciated them and felt for them, right? Like, thought the world of my grandfather, and they would stop by unannounced, wouldn't let them know. They'd wake up the next morning and there was beef on their front porch. You with me? Like, that was the kind of thing that happened on a regular basis. And it got my grandfather to a place to where he started thinking about what was possible. This man who had an 8th grade education, had to quit halfway through the 8th grade, became a millionaire. And the way he became a millionaire was he took risk, obviously, right? But he also had an incredible work ethic. And when he was 7 years old, I guarantee you, if he had access to the library, he'd have been reading Dale Carnegie. Does that make sense? If he was in your shoe, you know what I'm saying? Yes. So this was a man who never stopped learning, never stopped reading, completely was in curiosity, right? So I absolutely believe you. I think that it's one of the coolest things I've ever heard, that you're 7 years old and you're reading that book.
Yeah.
I know people who read that book before they were 10 years old. Their parent, their dad had gone to that seminar, that kind of thing. So it has had an impact. Dale Carnegie's had more of an impact on people than they possibly imagine. Yeah. And it's one of those things where young men are trying to emulate their father a lot of times, and they end up with that textbook, or they end up with that study guide. So I'm serious. This is a big thing. So I totally believe you 1000%. And I'm really happy that you did that. Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Just because I'm incredibly curious.
Sure.
What made your parents move from Hackensack to Kennebunkport?
They were trying to get away from their parents.
Oh, were they?
So they just kept moving up the East Coast,
right?
From
the further
New
we
Jersey
go,
to Massachusetts to Maine, and it just kept. And I was like, "Why didn't you go south? How about someplace warm like Florida?"
Right,
I wish I didn't have a say back then, but I'm like, "Why is that? It's warm.
Don't
what are
you
you doing
people
up there
like
in the
sunshine
cold?"
and palm trees? Come on now.
I know. I'm like, So, but I didn't have a say. But gosh darn it, I would have liked that a lot better.
Kennebunkport's famous for being the Bush White House, right? During the first Bush administration.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Well, I drove by the Bush compound literally every day on my on my way to and from school in the school bus. We would drive by
Wow.
the Bush compound. I mean, that's how wealthy this community is. I
Oh
mean,
my
we're talking the
goodness.
top 1% of 1%,
Yeah.
so it's amazing.
I
Anyway,
love
that was how I grew up.
I love your story. I
Yeah.
absolutely love your story. Of course, I love stories, but I love yours.
Thank you.
So growing up, what was your favorite thing about growing up in Kennebunkport?
Honestly, it really was the library. I
Yeah.
grew up, really in the library because that was my way of escaping.
Yep.
So along with every self-help book, I also read every science fiction book. So I was big
cool.
on Isaac Asimov and Robert A. Heinlein and all the classics of science fiction because I wanted to escape.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get out of there.
Yeah. No, I
So
totally understand.
but no, I mean that it's an amazing town, and now my wife and I, we just went back to my high school reunion, and we were driving around. I'm going, wow, this is. I mean, when you grow up someplace, you don't really appreciate it probably, or you don't see how different it might be. And we were driving around. I'm going, my God, this isn't the top 1%. This is the 0.01%.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the dirt road place I grew up is still there. It's
Is it
still a
really?
dirt road. And I'm like,
Oh,
see, I'm not making it up.
Yeah. I promise. I promise. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Yeah, I did. My favorite subject was Latin. I love Latin because Latin, as I'm sure you know, and most people listening to the program are aware, the English language and most languages that we have today, the Anglo-Germanic languages are from Latin. So I really wanted to study Latin for that reason, because I love language. I love words. I mean, when I was a kid, my dream was to be a writer. Most kids dream about being an astronaut or a firefighter or a baseball player. I really wanted to be a writer. So now, I mean, I've written 25 books, and in all this time. And, in fact, I'm the only author in history that's had works published by Hay House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Mind Valley, Nightingale Conan, and the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. No one else in history has ever done that. Not Tony Robbins, not Wayne Dyer, not Earl Nightingale. Just little old me. So, I was able to fulfill my dream.
Little old you. So you worked with Mark Victor Hansen?
No. It was the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher.
I got you. Okay.
Health Communications is the name of the publisher.
I got you.
And it was actually Jack Canfield who introduced me to the owner, Peter Vegso of HCI, and he was actually the person that gave me my first big break, my first publishing deal back in 1998. And so awesome. Really, it was Jack that gave me, my big break in terms of getting my first book published way back then.
How'd you meet Jack?
Well, it's funny because I was actually going to college in Amherst, Massachusetts as a religious studies major. And so I was studying religious studies, and I was reading the paper one day, and I saw that Jack Canfield was actually going to be winning an award at the University of Massachusetts. That's where he's an alumnus of. And that's right down the street from where I was living. And it just so happened that I knew the alumni director at UMass. So I walked into his office and I said, could you introduce me to Jack? And he said, yeah, sure. So there's going to be like a party, for the award winners. And, he said, hey, if you're here at 11 o'clock, I'll introduce you. So I was there and I met Jack. Now, at that time, I had actually self-published my very first book, which was entitled Permission to Succeed. You can actually see it back right there. That's the Chicken Soup book called Permission to Succeed. But anyway, so I had self-published at that time. This was in 1997, 98. And so I was introduced to Jack. I showed him my self-published book, and I said, hello, Mr. Canfield. I'm a big fan of your work, and I was wondering if you could take a look at my book. And he was very gracious. He just took one look at my book, and by that time, I already had several testimonials of people that said this book changed their lives. Even my little self-published book, which only sold a few hundred copies, but I had some amazing, literally life-changing testimonials. So he looked at it, he said, yeah, this looks great. I'll send it to my publisher. And 8 weeks later, I got a call from the CEO of Health Communications, the Chicken Soup publisher, and sure enough, they gave me my first publishing contract. So that's how it all started right there.
Wow. So, so, okay. So you meet Jack Canfield. So you go to UMass to the alumni director.
Yes.
And how did you know him?
Amazingly, we had taught a class together at UMass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was an older student, and so I had gone back to college as a religious studies major, and we connected somehow, and we actually were teaching a public speaking course because I'd been doing public speaking for many years. In fact, I was the president of Toastmasters in Northampton, Massachusetts back then in the 90s. And so we met, and that's how I met him. We were doing a class together. Somehow that happened. That's how that helped. That's all came together. So yes, I know. I mean, it's crazy. When I think about it, I'm like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, it's awesome. So last night I flew back in from Northern California, and I was invited to do a toast to a public speaking class that was finishing up their semester last Tuesday night, the 3rd of June. And I gave a toast to this public speaking class. And it was one of at Stanford. And it was one of the coolest experiences. My son was there and his girlfriend, and it was really cool. So
that's awesome.
Oh, it was amazing. So I'm on this guy's podcast, and I didn't realize that he was actually a professor of public speaking at Stanford. So wild, just wild.
Nice.
And Mark Victor Hansen, the reason I asked about Mark Victor Hansen was he's been on our podcast, and he and I are writing together. So
nice.
Yeah, crazy. Okay. Small world, man. Small world.
Indeed.
So after high school, do you go to college?
Yeah. So I actually skipped 8th grade because I was one of those smart and talented, or what do they call it? Gifted and talented kids, because I was reading before I was 2 years old. And, they basically said, hey, no, we don't have anything else to teach you here. So you want to go to high school? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when I was taking Latin, and I took 2 years of Spanish in 1 year, and a lot of stuff like that. And so I graduated a year early from high school. I was the salutatorian in my class, National Merit Scholar, had all these scholarships. And so at that time, now people need to remember, this was in the 80s. So there was no internet or anything like that. That was still over a decade away. So for a so-called, gifted and talented kid, the only two options back then was being a doctor and a lawyer.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do either of those. I was like, no, thank you. I'm not interested.
Right.
So and again, believe it or not, it sounds like I'm making it up, but I'm not making it up, I became a professional dancer, a ballet dancer. So I went to the Boston Conservatory as a dance major. Now, the reason that I got into dance is when I was little, I had double jointed hips and I couldn't walk. I was actually not able to walk. So there's little home movies of me going around on this horsey with wheels on it. So I actually wasn't walking, and I would just like pull myself along on this little horsey with wheels on it.
Yeah.
And finally my parents said, why isn't he walking? And so they took me to a pediatrician, who examined me, and he said, well, you know what? So they put me in braces like Forrest Gump. If you remember that movie. So I had to wear those braces like Forrest Gump for a while. And then when I was 7 years old, my pediatrician said to my parents that I should take dance lessons to strengthen my legs. Otherwise, I was going to be weak my whole life.
Yeah.
So I started taking tap dancing lessons when I was 7. Then when I was 15, my dance teacher, who was a man, he was a male, it was actually a husband and wife team. And he said that I should take ballet. And I said, you're not getting me in tights. Forget you, And so finally he convinced me. I walked into my first ballet class when I was 15 years old, and it was me and 30 girls. And I said, why didn't you tell me this?
That's right. Yeah.
Even I can do this math. This is what we call a target-rich environment, my man.
This is a target-rich environment. This works.
Love it. I freaking love it. So that's why I decided, hey, this is great. This is my life right now, man. This is awesome. So, see, smart. Always thinking.
I'd have been early for this class.
Oh, yeah, man. I'll take it. Anyway, so then at age 17, I went to the Boston Conservatory. And then at age 18, I became a professional ballet dancer. I danced with Hartford Ballet, Boston Ballet, Richmond Ballet, Louisville Ballet. So I was going all along the East Coast there. And then I had a career-ending injury when I was 22. So it was a very short career.
Yeah.
And then I had to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life because I basically really didn't have an education. I was like, I had, 1 year of college at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I thought
Mhm.
this is what I was going to do for my life. And I'm out of a job. I'm out of livelihood at 22.
Yeah.
And so by that time, I had driven across the country, to Los Angeles, to try to be a movie star because I figured, well, let's see, I can't dance anymore, but it obviously doesn't take any talent to be an actor. I mean, look at all these clowns who are acting. You don't need to even know anything. I could just be a movie star. Great idea.
Why not?
Unfortunately, Hollywood was underwhelmed by my performance. So I couldn't get a job to save my life.
Oh, geez.
And so I'm like, well, what do I got? I need to eat. I got to live. What are we going to do here? So I went into a temp agency, back then, a temp agency. And I literally taught myself every software program they had. Now, this was still in the early 90s. So, I mean, we're talking Lotus 1, 2, 3. I don't think Microsoft was even around then.
Yeah.
It was like, anyway, all those old DreamWorks or whatever they are. Anyway, so I taught myself all of these different software because I'm like, well, maybe I can be, work as an administrative assistant. And sure enough, that's what I ended up doing. And that's how I, just subsisted there for 4 years out there in LA. The problem was that I was barely existing. And I was miserable because, of course, I hated that life. That wasn't what I wanted for my life. So at the age of 25, I actually made a decision to take my own life, to commit suicide at age 25.
Oh my God.
And I tell that story in my books, and in my seminars. But at the very last moment, my life was spared. And I didn't know why. But I realized I've got to find what is my purpose here on the earth. Why am I here? It's not to be a secretary. It's not, but I don't know and I don't know how to answer that question. So you know what I did? I went back to the library and I read every book in the spiritual section this time. I literally read over 200 books in the spiritual section, the spiritual thinkers of our time. And that's when I decided to go back to college when I was 25 and be a religious studies major. And then that's how the whole thing happened. And that's how I ended up meeting Jack and, writing my first book. And now, 25 books later, here we are. And what's even more exciting about that is now we've helped our clients add over $3 billion collectively, meaning we've helped real estate professionals, agents, brokers, chiropractors, health professionals, coaches, consultants, authors, speakers, wealth managers, people from all walks of life to literally add 6 figures, 7 figures, and even 8 figures using my power habit system, the system that I discovered 30 years ago as a result of all those travails that I had to go through. So, I mean, really, that's how everything started. And that's how, I ended up here today.
Wow. How did your life get saved?
Well, I do tell that story in my book, but very briefly, I had decided to take my own life. I just made a decision one day that I was just tired of being here. I was literally looking the next 40 years of my life, and I said, no, this isn't what I want, and I don't want to be here anymore. So I was living in this little apartment in North Hollywood, California, and I didn't have a gun, thank goodness. And I was like, I didn't want to cut myself with a knife. So I said, I remembered seeing or hearing somewhere that if you pull your car into a garage and shut the door with the engine running, you would asphyxiate yourself and you would die. And I figured, well, that's a good way to go, because basically you fall asleep and you don't wake up.
Right.
There was just one problem. I was living in this little apartment and we didn't have a garage. We had open auto bays. So I said, well, that's not going to work. So what do I do? Well, I literally got in my car and I started driving around North Hollywood and Van Nuys looking for an open garage that I could pull my car in and shut the door behind me. And believe it or not, I actually found an open garage. Literally just a garage sitting there with the door open.
Oh, I believe it.
And I
If you
said,
seek it,
okay,
you'll find it. You know what I mean?
I know. And
Yeah.
I did. And it's kind of incredible when you think about it. But anyway, I did. And I was literally right about to pull my car in and pull the, door shut behind me when I saw something in the corner of that garage that saved my life. And it was a child's bicycle. I saw a child's bicycle in the corner of the garage. And as I looked at that bicycle, and I could tell it was a kid's bike because it had, the white handlebars and the little thing like when we were kids. And I looked at that, and then I all of a sudden had a flash of a vision go through my mind. And I saw a family, a young mother and father and a child, maybe two, that they came to their home and they found my dead body in their garage.
Mm.
And I saw, the woman, she was crying, and of course the kid was very upset. And as soon as I saw that vision, I said, Noah, you can't do this. You cannot do this to this family.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I don't know who it is, and I'll never know who it is.
Yeah.
It was a vision that I had, but that vision and seeing that child's bicycle is, in fact, what saved my life. So I pulled away, went back home, and I said, okay, all right, God, what is it you want from me? What do you want me to do now? And that's when I started my spiritual journey, and which led to all the work that I've been doing for the last 30 years now.
Well, that was absolutely a God thing. I believe that.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Thanks for telling that. That had to have been difficult. I just wanted to know. I apologize. So
no, that's fine.
let's go back for just a second, because there's something that I heard you say that I want to ask you about.
Uh-huh.
So in school at 7, you start reading books and you start sort of spending a lot of time in the library. It's sort of your escape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you end up skipping the 8th grade.
Uh-huh.
Is that partly because of your motivation to get out of there?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
I was like, let's move, let's go,
Right.
go, let's hurry it up here, let's go.
And
Yes.
then spending all that time in the library probably helped you in terms of your studies, right? In terms of what it was that you were studying as you were growing and going through school. You probably had a lot of that knowledge already from the reading you had done. You probably skipped ahead quite a bit.
Well, I did, yes. And I mean, what was interesting was that I did go to college the first time when I was 17,
Yeah.
and then again 10 years later after that at age, 20, 25, so almost, 10 years later.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because having lived, being out in the real world, I really enjoyed the second time in college much better than the first time. Because, I was very young and I had no life experience. By the time I went back, I was like, okay, now I see what's going on around here. And, it was frankly, a lot more fun. And
well, you had an appreciation, right? Because you sort of had gone out there and the world had kind of beaten you up a little bit, right?
That's right.
So after you have this experience, you're convinced that there's something that you're here for, right? God has a plan for you.
Yes.
And then you go to work basically researching. You're back in the library. You're reading. You're in the religious section, right? You're reading everything you can get your hands on. What was it that propelled you from the time that you spent in the library? What was it that propelled you to go back to school and to study religious studies?
Well, I was very consciously and purposefully following in the footsteps of Dr. Stephen Covey, who, as I'm sure most people listening to the program know, is famous for writing many works, his most famous being The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
So when I first found that book, I was actually in church. It was in the early 90s, and I was in church, and I was, just in my church bookstore where I was always loving to be, after church service. I was in the bookstore, and I was just, browsing away, and all of a sudden I see something fall off the shelf at my feet. And it sounds like I'm making this up again, but I'm not making this up. And I looked around, I'm like, what the heck was that? Was there a wind that came through? Why is
right.
Anyway, I was like, okay. So I picked it up, and it was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm like,
oh my goodness gracious.
I never heard of it before. I was like, oh, that's a good title, right?
I love it.
This is how long ago it was. It was on audio tape. It was on an audio tape for those of you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. For those of you who are born after 2000, it's a thing that goes around. Anyway, Google
Right,
that.
right. It's two spools.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, so
yeah, right.
right. And so I listened to that over and over and over again. I literally listened I just had it on repeat in my car as I was driving around. And I mean, the first time I listened to it, tears were just streaming down my face because I realized, oh my gosh, I have been living the 7 habits of highly ineffective people my whole life.
Yeah.
And he literally, that's how I felt at the time. He literally explained my whole life. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so true.
Wow.
And so I really researched Dr. Covey, and I found that he had been a religious studies major in college. And so I said, you know what? I want to be like him.
Yeah.
And so that's why when I went back to college in 1995, I was literally absolutely purposely following in his footsteps. And what's incredible is I actually called his office and I got to interview Dr. Covey. This was in 1996. I still have my notes from that interview. I got to interview him on the phone, and I got 20 uninterrupted minutes with Dr. Stephen Covey, who was my idol, and literally the reason that I got in this business in the first place. And you know, he was wonderful. He wasn't rushed or anything. Spending time with me, a college student from nowhere, and I was like, he was so amazing. And he said many things that I loved, but he said one thing in particular that I always remember and keep with me. And I asked him, I said, Dr. Covey, how do you handle it when people just, worship you and say you're the greatest thing in the world? And how do you handle that kind of, attention or whatever? And so he said something that I'll never forget. He said, Noah, I want people to leave my seminars more impressed with themselves than with me. Isn't that amazing? What a wonderful quote that is. What a wonderful quote that is. Now think about this for everyone listening. Think about how opposite that is of what we have today with social media, right? Yeah. With social media, it's all, look at me, look how cool I am, look at my jet, look at my helicopter, look at my, car, look at my yacht. Aren't I just incredible? Hey, man, I'm so cool. So he was and embodied the opposite of that is, no, it's not about me. It's about you. It's about what we can do together. And I believe that's how he lived and, the example that he gave. And that's the example that I've been trying and striving to give, for the past 30 years now. When he said that to me, that really, really hit me. And I've striven to do that ever since, is to leave people more impressed with themselves than with me.
Wow. That is so amazing. I love that story. That is so cool. Okay. Tell you what, we have to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the power habits Power Habits book.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about specifically how it applies to people's lives and it can help them take their lives to the new level. We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. We're back with Dr. Noah St. John, the author of Power Habits for Real Estate Professionals. I absolutely love this. And I love the story that you have in terms of what it is, how it is that you've come to where you are today. When you had an opportunity to talk with Dr. Stephen Covey, which I'm completely envious, by the way, and he said to you that his goal is for people to leave more impressed with themselves than they are with him. That had to have had an impact on you and something that it sounds like drove you for the rest of your life. It sounds like that's something you're striving to do every single day.
Well, it is. And this, of course, this conversation happened long before social media even existed. Oh, sure. And so it is really tough today because what happens is with social media, we see that the what I call them is the self-marketers. They're great self-marketers, self-promoters, right? Look at me. Look how cool I am. Don't you want to be like me? Now give me money so you can be like me. Okay. Yeah. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not, it's not terrible. It's not bad. But what happened was when I started my business back in 1997, I didn't have any idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I just had these epiphanies, these discoveries that led me to write my first book, Permission to Succeed, and now 25 books later. But, back then I didn't know anything about running a business or anything like that. So I ended up spending a ton of money, giving all these gurus a ton of money, only to find out they suck at teaching.
Yeah.
There's literally no there.
Yeah.
They're great at saying, look at me. They're great
Promoting.
at self-promotion.
Right.
But there's nothing there. There's nothing.
Meat. There's no meat on the bone.
Right. Exactly. There's no meat on the bone. Exactly. They say, sell the sizzle, not the steak. There's all sizzle and no steak.
Exactly.
There ain't no steak. I'm like, I'm still hungry, guys. I gave you a lot of money. I still got no food.
How am I going to satiate myself on sizzle? Come on now.
Exactly. So, they took that very seriously. Anyway, my point is that, so for me, I'm a teacher. Yeah. I'm not a natural marketer. I'm not a great self-promoter, right? Yeah. But, what my clients tell me is that I'm the person they go to after they've tried everything else. I'll give you a quick example of that. I have a program called the 12-Week Breakthrough. And the reason we have that is because I'm known as the teacher that helps people make more in just 12 weeks than they did in the previous 12 months, while actually winning their lives back at the same time, meaning working less and making a lot more.
That's cool.
And so, I have had many people go through that program. Well, I had one woman go through that program. Her name's Tamisa. She is a real estate professional in Arizona. And she was a self-described seminar junkie. That's what she called herself. And you can actually watch her video and many other people's videos on my website. But anyway, she said, I'm a recovered seminar junkie. And she was going to all these seminars, trying to learn this stuff, kind of like I was doing before, But for her, she had reached what I like to call an income ceiling, meaning, you're hustling, you're grinding, but you just can't seem to break through, you're whatever it is, you're making 10,000 a month or 50,000 or whatever it might be. But no matter how hard you work, it's like right all around there. It's an income ceiling. Anyway, so she decided, a friend recommended me to her and she joined my 12-Week Breakthrough coaching program. Well, she ended up tripling her investment in just 2 weeks. 2 weeks, she tripled her investment. Okay. Wow. So, and we hadn't even gotten to the money part yet. So that's how powerful these power habits are. Yeah. All right. So the point is that, when you have people that have been really listening to these guys and going to a bunch of seminars, which is very common, and they're still hitting an income ceiling, that's usually when people come to me and then they realize, wow, I don't have to run around all these seminars anymore. This is nice.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So you mentioned your website. Give us your website address. I mean, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have it in the description and that kind of thing, but tell us what your website is for people that want to go now.
Okay. So we have two that I want to talk about. The first is called powerhabitsrealestate.com, just like it sounds. So it's powerhabitsrealestate.com. That's for the Power Habits for Real Estate Professionals program. So that's an online course. It's done at your own pace. There's videos, there's checklists, there's literally fill in the blanks. And I walk you through my Power Habit system that has made real estate professionals literally hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 30 years. The second website that people can go to is called breakthroughwithnoah.com. Easy to remember. I'm known as the Breakthrough Coach, right? So breakthroughwithnoah.com. And that's where you can actually schedule a 15-minute business evaluation. It's complimentary. So you're going to get on a Zoom with either me or one of my coaches, and we're going to actually walk you through the number one thing that's blocking you, that's holding you back from reaching your next level. And we're going to give you a 3-step, process method so that you can literally make more in 12 weeks than you did in the previous 12 months. So that's at breakthroughwithnoah.com.
And that's free?
Yes, that's a complimentary business evaluation. Yes. Yes. Wow. And by the way, when you go to breakthroughwithnoah.com, you can actually watch Tamisa's video and many other videos, case studies. See, just like I talked about with Dr. Covey, I'd rather brag about my clients. I feel like the one thing that's missing in this industry, I mean, the guru industry, is case studies, is examples. Because, when we look at that guru, okay, you're rich, you got a helicopter, you got a yacht. That's great. Have you helped anyone else make money?
Right.
You know, and usually the answer is, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
not really. So I'd rather, I mean, doesn't that just make sense though? That
does.
shouldn't it work for other people, not just the
Absolutely.
guru? You know, it's like,
No,
duh.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that.
You know?
Okay. So let's talk about power habits for real estate
Yes.
professionals.
Yes.
So what is it about your book and those power habits that is helping people transform their business as much as it is?
Well, it's really incredibly powerful. So this is what I discovered back in October of 1997. So I've been doing this, 30 years now.
Yeah.
And what I realized is after reading 300 self-help books that basically all say the same thing, set your goals and think positive and, say the thing, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard it a million times.
Sure.
And I realized that highly successful people, all these people that we, look up to, the 1%ers, I call them, they're doing things unconsciously that they don't even know they're doing, number one. And therefore, number two, they can never teach it to us. Okay. So when you look at other habits training, like 7 Habits and, other habits training, there's lots of habits training out there. But what they're talking about are the conscious habits. Okay.
Right.
Now, nothing wrong with that, right? Set your goals, think positive. It's not like that's bad advice.
Right.
But here's the problem. And this is why so many people come to me, when after they've hit an income ceiling, and no matter what they do, they can't break through.
Right.
What I realized is that it's exactly like the iceberg principle, right? Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with the iceberg principle of human behavior. About 5% is visible above the surface. That's the conscious mind.
Right.
But the vast 95% is below the surface. That's the subconscious mind. So this is science, by the way. This isn't woo-woo. This is, hard science. Only about 5% of our thoughts, behaviors, and actions are conscious. The vast 95% is subconscious. So think about this. Like when I'm doing a keynote presentation, whether it's live or virtual for real estate teams and organizations all around the country, around the world, what I'll say to my audience members is, all right, imagine you're going into battle and you got 5 guys fighting 95 guys. Who do you think's going to win? Right? The 95, but only every time. Only every time. Okay.
Right.
So that's what we're fighting in ourselves, right? We're fighting the 95 with the 5. Good luck.
Yeah.
Right. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I always like to say to my audience members, just like the iceberg, right? Well, it wasn't the part of the iceberg that they could see that sunk the Titanic. It's the part that they didn't see that sunk the Titanic. And that's what's sinking most of us too.
Yeah.
All right. So that's what makes my power habits system different. By the way, this is my book called Power Habits.
Love it.
This is published by Nightingale Conant, so you could, get that on Amazon or anywhere. But basically, so what I discovered and identified are these 11 power habits. You can see that's right on page 100 of the Power Habits book.
Yeah.
So there are 11 power habits that are in the subconscious mind. In other words, highly successful people are doing these habits unconsciously. They don't even know they're doing them. Now, how do I know this? I've interviewed literally over 200 millionaires and multimillionaires, even a few billionaires. And I will invariably ask them, so did you ever notice you do such and such? And they'll go, huh, yeah, you're right. I never even thought about that before. Great. You're unconscious. You literally just proved my point. So you could sit there and interview these guys all you want. You could interview them all day. They'll never tell you the actual thing. They'll tell you things that aren't wrong. Set your goals, think positive, work hard. Okay, no kidding.
Right.
How come I'm still hitting an income ceiling? Like Tamisa, perfect example. She heard all this a million times. Income ceiling. I'll give you another perfect example, right? I was speaking at a seminar in Los Angeles for 1,000 business owners. These are entrepreneurs, 7- and 8-figure earners, very successful people, right? So I was speaking about, everything we're talking about right now. And so I spoke for about 30 minutes. I was walking off the stage right after my presentation. Now, a man came up to me out of the audience. He ran up to me and he said, Noah, you are the coach I've been looking for. I want to hire you as my coach right now. Now, I didn't know this man from Adam. Ironically, his name was Adam. True story. You can see his video on my website too, and many others.
Right.
Anyway, so I said, okay, well, what's going on? He goes, well, Noah, I own this company and we are at 7 figures, but we have been stuck at the same level for the past 4 years. He said, we've been just plateaued here. And he said, I have spent so much money. I've thrown everything I can at the problem. I've hired all these marketing gurus. He named all the big gurus. And he said, we just can't break through that income ceiling. And it's as soon as I heard you, as soon as I heard you speak about power habits and, foot on the brake and everything you just talked about, he said, I knew you were the coach I've been looking for. That's why I love working with high achievers, right? Because they make decisions quickly and friendly. They don't dilly-dally. They don't say, oh, I got to think about it. I got to talk to my spouse, whatever. They just do it, right? So he literally
very refreshing,
decided to hire me on the spot.
It's very refreshing.
It's wonderful, right? So anyway, so I coached him and his leadership team for 18 months. Now, in that 18 months, we were able to scale his business that had been stuck at 7 figures for the previous 4 years to over 20 million in revenues in less than 18 months. We call that hockey stick growth, right? It looks like a hockey stick, like you go on, and then we put my power habit system, and then whoop, right through the roof, 600%. Most business owners are thrilled with 10%.
Yeah,
in a year or whatever, 600% in 18 months. It's unheard of. So
what does that tell you about his organization? Were they like ready to explode? They just needed the right kind of guidance?
Well, the point is that's what my power habit system represents. Okay. So another thing that I love teaching and talking about is my favorite Venn diagram of all time. Now, this is on page 44 of Power Habits. I'll show it to you. It's right here. A little hard to see, but anyway, when you get the book, you can see it.
Yeah. Success. I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's called the Venn diagram of success. I'm known as the Sheldon Cooper of self-help. So I love Venn diagrams. I'm the nerdiest nerd in the industry.
There you go. I love it.
I love Venn diagrams. So this is the simplest Venn diagram you'll ever see. It's called inner game and outer game. Okay. So there's 2 circles that meet in the middle, inner game and outer game. So inner game is everything that happens between your ears that you can't see directly, but it affects everything you do. Right. So like another thing I like to do in my keynote presentations, whether live or virtually for real estate professionals, real estate teams, organizations, I will say, okay, now what is one area of your life where your beliefs don't affect you? And here's what people do. They'll go, I'll go, exactly. There's no place your beliefs don't affect you, right? Your beliefs affect your health, your peace of mind, your stress level. Your beliefs affect your wealth, your money, your income, your business, right? Whether you get that promotion or not, or whether you start a business or write that book or launch a course, right? Or that's your beliefs, but also beliefs affect your relationships, right? Your personal, your business, your family life, everything. There's no place your beliefs don't affect you. But here's the funny thing. You can't see a belief. You can only see the effects of a belief, right? That's why you can be doing really well in one area, but maybe you're stuck or struggling in another. For example, maybe your business is going really well, but maybe your health is suffering or your relationships because you're spending all your time at work or vice versa. Maybe, you're doing really good with your health, but you're not making the money you want, right? So it's not cookie cutter, one size fits all. It's a very customized, personalized approach that we take with our coaching because everybody is different, right? So that's the inner game. But then we also have the outer game. Now, the outer game is everything you can see directly. That's your system, strategies, sales, marketing, offers, funnels, traffic, all the stuff, right, that you see. And so going back to Adam's example, see, he had spent tens of thousands of dollars on the outer game. And hey, got into 7 figures, nothing to sneeze at. But because no one had shown him how to master his inner game, that's why he couldn't break through that ceiling. So it's only when I taught him how to master my power habit system, that's when we had the hockey stick growth. So it's incredibly powerful.
So what's the one key thing, the one key change that somebody needs to make to implement power habits?
You need to understand the power of unconscious habits.
Right.
Okay. And one of the things that I talk about is your head trash. Your head trash is the voice in your head that says, I can't do it because ... Right. So like you set your goals. That's great. Hey, no, I want to go from 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month. That's a great goal, right? Very great goal to have as an entrepreneur or a business owner or whatever. The problem is what most people do is they say, I want to go from 10K to 100K a month. I don't think I can do it. I don't have the time. I'm too busy. Well, no, I can't work any more than I'm doing right now. You want me to work 10 times harder, 10 times longer? I can't do it. And I, of course, say, well, no, we're going to actually have you work less and make a lot more. The reason you're stuck is because you haven't installed these inner game and outer game systems that I've been teaching for the last 30 years that have helped my clients make $3 billion. I'll give you a quick example.
Sure.
I was talking with one of my clients His name's Charles. And I asked him one question. I ask all my clients, whether it's one-on-one or group coaching. And I said, how much do you think your head trash is costing you right now? And if we don't get rid of it, how much do you think it's going to cost you in the next 12 months? Without batting an eye, he said $1 million. He said, no, I'm easily going to lose $1 million. Now, he'd been reading my books. He, got my courses. And so he understood the power of what I'm talking about. So I said, Charles, I tell you what, why don't you just give me 10% of that million and I will find you $1 million in the next 12 months. In other words, if you give me $1 and I give you $10 back, is that a good deal? He goes, yeah, that's a good deal. So he decided to do that. He literally decided to invest on the spot. Love working with high achievers, right? Yeah. So he invested $100K for one-on-one coaching with me. And that's 10% of $1 million, right? So as it turns out, I didn't find him $1 million in the next 12 months. Instead, I found him 1.8 million in just 10 months. So he gave me $1. I gave him $18 back. Right. Is that a good deal? No, that's a great deal.
That's a great deal.
And he actually sent me an email and he said, I'm on a 7-week vacation with my wife. No, this is a dream I've had for the last 20 years. We just bought a new RV. We're driving around the country. We're exploring the country. I've wanted to do this for the last 20 years, but I haven't had the time or the money. So he said, now, because of your coaching, I've got the time and the money that I've always dreamed of. So he literally said, thank you, Noah, for changing my life.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So how does that feel?
It feels amazing. I mean, I love this, and I really love seeing my clients win. It all goes back to what I said about Stephen Covey. I'd rather brag about my clients than myself. And that makes me different in this industry, shall we say. You'll notice that most of my talking here isn't bragging about me. It's bragging about my clients. And that's how you know it works. That's how you know it's a system. It's not about me and my personality. That's what we see out there. It's all personality driven. Well, that's great for you. What if I don't have that personality? Right. We want systems driven. And that's what makes it so powerful. And that's why we've helped our clients at over $3 billion collectively.
Absolutely. So let's say somebody works with you.
Yes.
And they go through coaching and they get their company to, they earn an extra 1.8 million, that kind of thing, right? Do the hockey stick thing, right?
Yeah.
Does it stick? Is it permanent?
Well, the only reason it would not be permanent is if you stop doing what works, which is power habits. So, it's not just about money, by the way. I'll give you another great example. I had a woman come to me and she was told she was obese for her entire life. And she was, very overweight, but she'd been told since she was a little girl, you're fat, you're obese. What do you think her head trash was, right? Sure. Oh, I can't lose weight no matter what I do. Yeah. So I taught her how to flip that. I showed her, I walked her through my power habit system. She literally lost over 120 pounds and has kept it off for the past 7 years. Yeah. I had another client who was a drug addict and, he hired me and I was kind of like his last hope. And now he started his own business. Of course, he quit drugs and that's been over 5 years. So, it's not just about money. Of course, money's great, but it's more than money.
It is. And, I'm identifying with you and identifying with what you do because I've been through something like this. My entire life, I've been big. My entire life, I've been big, overweight, the whole thing. And I did the best I could to try to manage it, that kind of thing. But I had this loop going on in my mind. Yeah. And it's a voice, right? That basically said, I've got to take care of everybody else first and not take care of myself, right? Yeah. And 7 years ago, I had a major health scare. Landed me back when there was this flu that was going around that was killing people. It was one of the deadliest ever. It was 7 years ago. I got it, both barrels. And I was down for 6 days straight with a fever. After my fever broke, I couldn't get my heart to stop racing. It was just racing. So I drove myself to the emergency room. I walked in and they said, why are you here? And I patted my chest and they took me back immediately and, took my shirt off and patted me up. They thought I was having a heart attack. Turned out my blood sugar was 343. Wow. I had full-blown type 2 diabetes.
Oh, boy.
And I was 51 years old and my dad was 51 years old when he was diagnosed. So I had an 8.2 A1C. The next day I go to the doctor and I'm like, what do I need to do? The doctor said, you need to lose weight. I'm like, Doc, I've lost 104 pounds. And she goes, well, you need to lose more and you need to do it now, or you're going to die quickly. You're going to die a very early death. You're not going to be around to walk your daughter down the aisle. You're not going to be around to see your son graduate, your daughter graduate. I mean, right?
Yeah.
And man, did it rock my world. And it became one of those things where I had to force that loop in my head to change. And I did so basically in 90 days, I lost 51 pounds. I took my A1C from 8.2 down to 5.5, which isn't diabetic anymore. And I've been managing it ever since, right? With diet and exercise and that kind of thing. But that loop in my head that was a lie had to change, right?
Yes.
And I got it to change because there's a reason why when you're on an airplane, and I was just on one last night, there's a reason why when you're on an airplane, they tell you when the oxygen mask, if the oxygen masks fall, put yours on first and then help the person next to you.
Right.
You have to take care of you if you're going to be able to take care of anybody else. You have to come first, right? That's not something that culture helps us with. It doesn't. It tells us basically that we're being selfish, that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, that kind of thing. And they can, social media, that kind of thing continues to drive that narrative. Well, that narrative is killing people.
Yeah.
Literally killing people. And that's why I love what you're doing, because you're literally going to the source and you're correcting it. You're helping people to correct that sort of lie that's happening in there. And by the way, limiting beliefs are a lie too, right? I don't have time. I'm already working too much. All that wonderful stuff that's going on in their head, those are all lies, all of them. And I love the fact that you're attacking this at the source and turning that lie into what needs to be a truth. That is absolutely powerful. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard.
Thank you.
I'm really, really thoroughly impressed with you. And I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to meet and to have you as a guest on our program. So let's go back to the websites again. So if people are looking for coaching from this, I don't know how they couldn't, but if they're looking for coaching, if they're looking for help, if they're looking for that free 15-minute an analysis type thing, where do they go? So one is Power Habits for Real Estate Professionals, right?
Right. That's powerhabitsrealestate.com. Easy to remember. Powerhabitsrealestate.com.
Powerhabitsrealestate.com. And then the other one is
breakthroughwithnoah.com. Breakthroughwithnoah.com.
Gotcha.
And by the way, my main website is just my name, noahstjohn.com. You can see we have tons of different programs, and you can see all my books, and we've got lots of free resources. So yeah, that's, if you're Googling me, just go noahstjohn.com, but breakthroughwithnoah.com. If you want to literally just skip to the front of the line, and let's get that hockey stick for you.
Yeah, let's get going, right? Let's get going. Yes. If you're somebody who's impatient like I am, you're going to be on that website. You're going to be registering. It's that simple. So one last question. And by the way, I just want to acknowledge you for what you're doing to change this world for the better. Just amazing story. I love where you come from. I love what you've done with your life, and I'm super proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
One last question. What does tomorrow look like for you?
Well, you know what? I am living my dream. I'm a writer, which is what I always dreamed of being. I have a beautiful wife, beautiful home. I shared my story. I started from very, very humble beginnings. So, to build this, and now together with my beautiful wife, it's every day we just laugh, we enjoy, and it's just awfully nice. Every day I thank God for the gifts of my life, and it's just a real privilege to do the work that I get to do and meet great people like yourself.
That's awesome, man. Noah St. John, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed every second of it. I appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. and the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.